Time now for The Real Estate Connection with Stephen Theard, a realtor and certified probate and real estate specialist. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned investor looking to downsize, move up, or refinance, this program is for you.
Our house in the middle of our street. Our house that you've got to in the middle of our...
From probate sales to landscape design to home repairs and maintenance, this is your weekly look into all things real estate. Now your host for The Real Estate Connection, Stephen Theard.
Welcome to The Real Estate Connection. Thank you for joining me on today's show with your radio realtor, Stephen Theard. Hey, God bless you for joining me today, and I appreciate your support. So here's a fantastic round of applause for you guys for showing up. Hey, we're just going to jump right on in. You know, we've hit the month of November, and we're heading into the almost the middle section of it already, as we are into the second weekend of the month, and thoughts are turning towards Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's right. Some of you out there may be partying, or not partying, but looking to throw a party for friends and family to come over. And as they say on the interwebs, have a funeral for your turkey so you can have more than 30 people present to put on bump. Yeah. Enough of that. But anyway, it's getting colder, and we're talking about Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the weather is changing. We're starting to see colder air, and maybe even the prospect and the thought of rain on the horizon. For some, the thought of rain is a welcome change, and to others, the thought of rain brings about the worry of higher water tables and potential flooding. So with that being said, in today's show, we'll be doing a review of flood insurance and how it works. So grab a pen, grab a pencil and a piece of paper and be ready to take some notes as we dive into our annual review of flood insurance. And oh, by the way, if you're new and you don't want to miss another show, send me an email right now at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's INFO at realestateconnectionradio.com with your name and your email address, and I will be happy to add you to my podcast distribution list. Or if you just want a link to today's show, if you're driving or something and you're not able to take notes about flood insurance and you want a link, go ahead and send me an email as well at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. Again, info@realestateconnectionradio.com. All right, before we jump in, I want to give credit where credit is due. Goes to me, your researcher, Stephen Theard, your radio realtor. That's right. Went out and did some research on this in a prior show, and I'm bringing it back to life, as it's always good to get a refresher course on flood insurance. And it also helps me to remember maybe some long lost forgotten details, because even though practicing real estate every single day for the last 15 years, not all of these issues pop up in every transaction. So it's a good review for yours truly as well. So I hope you're prepared to go down this road of flood insurance. So let's get down to business. Now, flooding is the nation's #1 natural disaster. And that is absolutely something that you may not have known, but absolutely, besides tornadoes and hurricanes, flooding is the nation's #1 natural disaster. Floods occur in every single area of the country, and there are many property owners who remain unprepared for flooding. Now, it could be a flash flood or a freak storm, or it could be that you live in an area where flooding is normal, or you could live in a 100-year floodplain and you just happen to be alive when that 100-year flood hits. All right, so something interesting that you should know is that standard homeowners insurance policies do not cover flood damage. Let me repeat that for you again. Your standard homeowners insurance policies do not cover flood damage. So like I said, today we're going to discuss with you the options you have available to protect your property from flood losses as it relates to flood insurance. Hey, I'm just going to stop this for a quick commercial break for myself. Hey, if you're looking to buy or sell in the near future and you want to work with a knowledgeable realtor, Stephen Theard, your radio realtor, give me a call right now at 408-472-0817. Again, 408-472-0817. Let's talk about your particular situation, whether that relates to whether or not your home is located in a flood zone, or maybe you're located in an earthquake zone or a fault line, and how that might affect you selling your house, or how that affects the buying process if you're getting into the real estate market for the very first time and need some guidance as to how the process works. Give Stephen Theard, your radio realtor, a phone call at 408-472-0817. Again, that's 408-472-0817. So in 1968, the United States Congress established the National Flood Insurance Program. So this was enacted by your lawmakers that you elected to go represent you in Washington, D.C. The National Flood Insurance Program, or the NFIP, is a federal program that allows property owners in participating communities to purchase insurance as a protection against flood losses. So again, if your community is participating in this federal program, it allows owners to purchase insurance as a protection against flood losses. Now, participating in the National Flood Insurance Program is based on an agreement between the community you live in and the federal government. So this is interesting information. It's just not like flood insurance just popped up out of nowhere, but this was actually legislated and put into place. And there are agreements that are made between your local community and the federal government to be able to participate in the flood insurance program. Now, the program is administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Now, a lot of you may hear that term passed around or thrown around when you hear talk of hurricanes happening out in the Gulf Coast, either hitting the states of Texas or Louisiana, or rolling through Florida, or or as it relates to maybe some other types of natural disasters that occur within the United States, as it may relate to tornadoes, or even earthquakes, or potentially even fires, if it's big enough. So this is the program. The program is administered for flood insurance by FEMA, which stands for Federal Emergency Management Agency, and provides flood insurance protection to property owners, renters. So you may not have known that, but flood insurance is available for renters and business owners. So if you're a business owner and you own a building, or you're leasing or renting a building, flood insurance is available to you as well if your community is a participant in the flood insurance program. So as long as your community participates in the flood insurance program, you are eligible to purchase flood insurance if you're a property owner, renter, or business owner. Now, if you would like to verify that your community participates in the program, you can go to the following website: www.fema.gov/national-flood-insurance-program-community-status book. Now, I know that's a lot. I hear what you're saying, Stephen, that is a long email address. Well, tell you what, send me an email at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's info@realestateconnectionradio.com. And I'd be happy to send you a link to the website so you can verify whether or not your community participates in the flood insurance program. And if you are at all thinking about selling or buying in the near future, give your radio realtor a call, Stephen Theard, at 408-472-0817. Again, 408-472-0817. And with that, we're coming up on a hard break, and we'll see you when we get done from paying some bills. See you in a minute.
Now back to the Real Estate Connection with Realtor and Certified Probate and Real Estate Specialist, Stephen Theard.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Connection with your radio realtor, Stephen Theard. Hey, if you're just joining the show, we are discussing today flood insurance. That's right. We're doing an overview on flood insurance as the weather is starting to change. It's starting to get cold outside. We're in the heart of November and people are thinking about Thanksgiving and the holidays, and rain may be on our horizon, tapping us on the shoulder as it's starting to build up the weather systems out there over the Pacific Ocean and coming in to give us a much needed rain in Northern California and throughout the Bay Area. And throughout the nation as well, as people are looking at snow and other areas of the country have been dealing with hurricanes. And so with all of that being said, there are folks within our state that deal with flooding on an annual basis. And you may be wondering how flood insurance actually works. So this is the show for you. If you've missed any part of today's show and you'd like to catch up, send me an email right now at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's INFO @realestateconnectionradio.com with your name and email address, and I'd be happy to add you to my podcast distribution list so that you do not have to miss any past or future content. Now, let's jump back into our discussion and the topic of flood insurance. So have you ever wondered what flood insurance actually is? What is the actual definition of flood insurance? So in general, flood insurance is an insurance policy that covers the direct physical loss of property from a flood. Okay, so let me repeat that. In general, flood insurance is an insurance policy that covers the direct physical loss of property from a flood. So now that you know the definition of flood insurance, right, and it's saying that it covers the direct physical loss of property from a flood, the next question that you should have is, what is the definition of a flood as it relates to flood insurance? So we're going to answer this question for you right now. So what is considered a flood for flood insurance? In terms of flood insurance purposes and coverage, a flood is when 2 or more acres or 2 or more properties are affected by water rising from the ground up. Okay, so let's repeat that because there's a lot to unpack. All right. So in terms of flood insurance purposes and coverage, a flood is when 2 or more acres. So if you have 2 or more acres that are affected, or you have 2 or more properties that are affected. So it's either or, are affected by water rising up from the ground. So the rain is falling or something happens and the water level is rising up from the ground, and it's affecting 2 or more acres or 2 or more properties, then you have what is defined as a flood. Now, here is an interesting question as it relates to flood insurance, okay? Are you ready? Are you ready? Is flood damage from wind-driven rain covered by flood insurance? Any answers for me out there? What do you think? What do you think the answer to that question is? Is flood damage from wind-driven rain covered by flood insurance? Well, here's the answer. The answer comes from floodsmart.gov from the internet. So you can check me on this. Go to floodsmart.gov. The answer to the question is no. When rain enters through a wind-damaged window or door, or comes through a hole in a wall or roof, the NFIP, which stands for the National Flood Insurance Program, considers the resulting puddles and damage to be windstorm related, not flood related. So there's an interesting twist in the definition of flooding. So again, it must be water rising up from the ground. If you have holes in your roof that are a result from a hurricane or wind damage or maybe even a tornado, and then there's rain that falls that comes in, resulting in puddles and damaged to be windstorm related, then it's not flood related as far as the NFIP is concerned. So that's something that that you can maybe trick your friends or family with as an interesting aside. I know it's really geeking out on real estate and flood insurance, but I thought it was an interesting question because, you know, the devil is in the details, folks, right? Always the devil's in the details. And when you're dealing with an insurance coverage or an insurance policy, when they start asking questions and they want to know exactly what happened, they're going to go back to that policy and match up the information that you provided to see whether or not the details of your specific situation marry up to the coverage that you've paid for. And if it's not, you could be left in the lurch, so to speak. So it's very important to understand the details. Now, if you're just joining the show and you're wondering, what's going on? What is this guy talking about? Well, you're listening to Stephen Theard, your radio realtor, for one thing. And we're covering flood insurance. Okay, if you've missed any portion of today's show and you'd like to catch up, send me an email right now at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's INFO at realestateconnectionradio.com. And I'd be happy to add you to my podcast distribution list so you don't have to miss any of the details or the background concerning what we're discussing today, which is flood insurance. All right, so let's get into the details based on the article from, let me look at my notes here, floodsmart.gov. All right, so what does flood insurance cover? So from that page, flood insurance covers overflow of inland or tidal waters. So think of storm surge if you're on the coast and you're dealing with a hurricane, if you're on the coast of, say, Texas, Louisiana, or Alabama, right? And you're in the Gulf Coast, or if you're in Florida. So it covers overflow of inland or tidal waters and unusual and rapid accumulation or runoff of surface waters from any source. So if you have a torrential downfall like we see up in Northern California, where the ground gets saturated quickly, or you have rivers or tributaries that overflow from excess water from an unusual or rapid accumulation or runoff of surface waters from any source, that could be maybe a levee or any of those other issues, then flood insurance covers. Now, however, it goes on to say the flood must be a general and temporary condition of partial or complete inundation of 2 or more acres of normally dry land area, or of 2 or more properties, at least one of which is yours. Okay, so getting back into the devil in the details, right, folks? We need to look at the details of what this actually means. So it must be an inundation or of a general. The flood must be a general and temporary condition of partial or complete inundation. So you must have been in an area where it's normally dry. It's not like it's wet all the time, okay? So if it's wet all the time, this is what tells me that it may not be coverage. Now, you have to check with your insurance agent, because I'm not a licensed insurance agent, and this is my caveat. Check with your licensed insurance agent for coverage for your specific situation. But in general, I'm just reading to you what has been written. It has to be in a temporary condition of partial or complete inundation of 2 or more acres of normally dry land, or of 2 or more properties, at least one of which is yours. Now, although flood insurance specifically excludes wind and hail damage, most homeowners insurance provides this coverage. So there you go. So it just outlined in this definition that most homeowners insurance policies will cover wind and hail damage. So again, if you'd like to talk about how this relates to your situation, if you're currently thinking of buying a house or selling your property, give me a call right now at 408-472-0817. Again, 408-472-0817 for your radio realtor. If you're thinking about either buying or selling your piece of residential real estate, and you want some assistance on how to plan to get the most amount of money for your sale, or how to close escrow on a purchase, and you need help from your radio realtor, Stephen Thayard, give me a call right now, 408-472-0817. And when we get back from the commercial break, we'll continue down the road of flood insurance and how it works. See you in a minute.
Looking to buy, sell, or refinance a home? Maybe you just need to spruce up the one you've got. This is the show that shows you how. It's The Real Estate Connection. Once again, your host, Stephen Thayard.
Welcome back to The Real Estate Connection with your radio realtor, Stephen Thayard. Hey, thank you for joining me on today's show as we have been discussing what could happen with a potential change of weather, where the rain starts to fall and fall and fall, and the ground gets saturated, and the water starts to rise, and areas may or start to flood. What do you do in that situation as far as how it relates to flood insurance? That's right, we're discussing flood insurance today. A deep dive, a 30,000-foot approach, just to go over the details of how it works. And if you're just joining me on today's show and you'd like to catch up on what we have missed or what you have missed, sorry about that, send me an email right now at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's INFO at realestateconnectionradio.com with your name and your email address, and I'd be happy to send you a link to the podcast or just add you to the podcast distribution list. If you'd like to check out my podcasts on your own, you can find The Real Estate Connection on Apple Podcasts or Podbean. Just go ahead and type in The Real Estate Connection under the business section on Apple and you should find me, or just go on to Podbean and type that on in there and you should find The Real Estate Connection and listen to your heart's content. Okay, so we're continuing down the road of flood insurance, and we've covered what it is, the definition of it, and kind of how it applies to property that has been damaged by a rising of water that has been normally in a dry area. Okay, so also it has to be 2 acres, 2 or more acres, or 2 or more properties that are normally dry. Okay. We also discussed that whether or not it covers wind damage and rain subsequently falling through holes in your property due to wind shear damages, and if that is covered under flood insurance or your homeowner's policy. So if you've missed that, go ahead and send me an email because you're going to want to catch up to that information as well. All right. So what does flood insurance cover? Okay, according to the ValuePenguin.com by LendingTree, the coverage is set up as follows. So this is where you're going to want to grab a pencil and a piece of paper. A flood insurance policy covers 2 types of property: the structure of your home and the contents. This distinction is made because each have their own deductibles and limits, respectively. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that just in case you missed it. All right, a flood insurance policy covers 2 types of property. 1, the structure of your home, and 2, the contents. This distinction is made because each has their own deductible and limits. So there's a different deductible and limit structure for the your home itself as far as the structure of your home, and there's a different deductible limit and structure for the contents of the home. This just So note that flood insurance policies do not cover the land your home sits on. Okay, so this also goes into a real estate as well, because when you're valuing, giving a value of real estate, you can depreciate the structure, but you never depreciate the land as far as the value is concerned for tax purposes. All right, the value of your total real estate is comprised of two pieces: the value of the land and then the value of the structure. And then that is valued based on how old it is and the condition. So there's two different pieces. And so this matches, right? So note that flood insurance policies do not cover the land your home sits on. So the coverage for the structure of your home typically includes the following. Okay, here we go. 1, the foundation. So this is your concrete perimeter foundation or your slab foundation. Whatever the foundation is of your home, the coverage for the structure of your home typically includes the foundation. Now, what else does it cover? Typically speaking, it includes electrical and plumbing. Now, when water comes into your house, if it rises high enough, it's going to hit your outlets, which could short out your electrical system and cause some serious damage to your property. So it's good to know that the electrical system is covered. Now you're thinking to yourself, now, Stephen, what damage could possibly be done to my plumbing since it's a closed system, right? The pipes are all interconnected and closed, unless like half my house is buried underwater and the flood waters get into my toilets and stuff, I should be okay. Well, you also have something called septic tanks. Okay, so a septic tank sits underground and it's usually empty other than the waste that you feed into the system. Now, when the groundwater starts to rise, your leach fields that drain out your septic tank and your septic tank itself will fill with excess water on your property, which could then potentially back up into your plumbing, as your toilet system and any other parts of your system in your home, which could cause some damage. So it's important to know that your plumbing will be covered as part of the structure of your home. So what other systems are covered when it comes to flood insurance? Well, you're going to have your central air systems and your furnace. Now, as this relates to electrical, on the exterior of your home, if you have a central air conditioning system, you're going to have a compressor. The compressor is used to cool down the liquid that runs through your house where the air is blown over in the furnace. Because what happens in a I know I'm going into air conditioning. So bear with me for a moment, okay? Your air conditioning system is a closed loop system with refrigerant that runs into the house where your furnace is located, and air blows over those cooling coils, which cools your house. But it goes back outside to the compressor when it heats back up and it needs to be cooled off again. Well, that compressor, if it gets filled full of water, could short out the electrical systems in the compressor, which could cause some damage with that part of your system. Additionally, if the water gets high enough, it could cause electrical damage in your furnace as well. So it's important to know that your central air systems and your furnace will be covered by flood insurance as well. Additionally, water heaters. Your water heater is typically in California elevated up off of the garage floor, but there are some homes where the water heater is located in a closet on the exterior of the property at ground level, and the water rising could cause damage to your pilot light or could get water into the gas tubes that feed the gas to be lit that heats the water. So that could ruin your water heater as well if it's located on the exterior of your home. So this flood insurance policy is very important for water heaters. Additionally, refrigerators, cooking stoves, and built-in appliances are covered as well. Now, you're probably going to have some serious water damage to your walls as well if your appliances are affected by a flood inside your home. So know that as well when you're considering, when you're looking at flood insurance. And also, last but not least, permanently installed carpeting over unfinished flooring is also covered in flood insurance. So again, if you're just joining me on today's show and you're wondering, what is this guy talking about? First of all, I'm Stephen Theard. I'm your radio realtor, and we're discussing flood insurance and what it covers. If you've missed any portion of today's show, send me an email right now at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's info@realestateconnectionradio.com with your name and email address, and I'd be happy to send you a link to this podcast or to this radio program or add you to my podcast distribution list. So we're running up on a hard break. When we get back, we're going to continue down the road of flood insurance and what you need to know as a homeowner or a potential homeowner. We'll see you in a minute.
Now back to the Real Estate Connection with Realtor and Certified Probate and Real Estate Specialist, Stephen Theard.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Connection with your radio realtor and host, Stephen Theard. Hey, if you're just joining us on today's show and you've missed any of today's content, but first of all, let me remind everyone what we've been talking about on today's show. You know, the weather is changing and we're expecting the clouds to start forming and rain to occur as we're heading into winter. And for some people, that means the prospect of potential flooding. So on today's show, we've been discussing flood insurance and digging into how it works, what it is, and what it covers. So if you're just joining and you've missed any part of today's show, send me an email right now at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's info@realestateconnectionradio.com with your name and email address, and I'd be happy to add you to my podcast distribution list. Or if you want to find the show directly, you can find us on Podbean at The Real Estate Connection or Apple Podcasts at The Real Estate Connection. So just put in that search bar on Apple Podcasts, The Real Estate Connection, or on Podbean, put in the search bar, The Real Estate Connection. I should pop on up and just subscribe there, and you can always be assured to have access to all of the past and current content. All right, so before we went to our hard commercial break, we were covering what does flood insurance actually cover. And before we went to the break, we were going through the structure. So now we're going to go through the contents. So just as a quick review, flood insurance has two different components to it. It covers the structure and it covers the contents, because the deductibles and the limits on the structure and the contents are different. So you need to know what is covered in regards to the structure and what is covered in regards to the contents of the home. So the contents inside your home that can be protected by a flood insurance policy include the following. So number one is clothing. Now, there's nothing more devastating than all of a sudden there being a break in a levee or a dam bursting open, doing an overflow to water, and you've got to leave your property quickly, and you're just thinking about saving your life and your very important things in your house, and you have to make very quick decisions, and you just don't have time because you need to get out, and your life is more important than anything else. But with that being said, if a flood comes through and it's a high one and intense, you could lose all of your clothing. So this is part of the interior contents that flood insurance covers. Also, furniture. Now, water is extremely damaging to cloth couches, mattresses, bed sheets, and things of that nature. Once it gets wet, and especially with dirty, mud-filled water, you can never recover it. So it's very important that your furniture is included in the coverage for our flood insurance policy. Also, electronics. You may be able to escape with your phones and your tablets, but if you have desktop computers in your home, like a lot of people are working from home these days, or printers or larger electronics in your home that allow you to still conduct business for your employer, or if you're self-employed, you may have to leave them behind in the event of a flood. And so it's good to know that your electronics are covered by flood insurance as well. Also, portable microwaves and portable air conditioners are included in what's covered as flood insurance for the interior of your home. This is important because refrigerators, cooking stoves, and built-in appliances were covered as far as the structure of your home because they're considered built-in. Again, verify with your flood insurance provider or look at your specific policy. Or if you have questions, call an insurance professional to give you specific advice. But based on what was covered in the structure, as far as cooking stoves and built-in appliances, it would make sense that your portable microwaves and portable air conditioners would fall under the contents. But also remember, the deductibles and the limits are different for you as it relates to flood insurance, as there are two different categories. One is for the structure and one is for the interior contents. So it's very important to know the distinction and the difference between those two. Continuing on, as far as what is covered as far as the contents of the home, dishwashers. So refrigerators were covered under structure. Dishwashers are covered as it relates to contents. Washers and dryers also. And then carpeting that is not covered as part of the structure. So in the last segment before we went to the commercial break, we discussed and you found out and you learned that permanently installed carpeting over unfinished floors was covered as part of the structure. So you may have asked yourself, Stephen, what about carpeting that's over finished flooring? Like I had hardwood floors installed into a mid-century house, and now there's carpeting over the top. Does that mean that my carpeting over a finished floor is not covered as part of flood insurance? Well, this clarifies it. Carpeting that is not covered as part of the structure is covered by the contents. But know that the deductibles and the limits are different based on whether or not it's covered under the definition of the structure or it's covered under the definition of the contents. Now, if you've just joined me on today's show and you're trying to catch up and you feel like you've been drinking through a fire hose with all of this information, send me an email at info@realestateconnectionradio.com. That's info@realestateconnectionradio.com with your name and email address. And I can send you a link to the flood insurance radio show or podcast, or I can just sign you up for my podcast distribution list, or you can find me, The Real Estate Connection, on Apple Podcasts or Podbean. All right. And if you are at all in the market and you're thinking about purchasing a home or thinking of selling one in the near future and you'd like to work with me, Stephen Thayard, your radio realtor, give me a phone call or call me directly at 408-472-0817. Again, 408-472-0817. And I'd be happy to set an appointment to meet with you to get you off the fence and moving forward if you're thinking about purchasing, or if you're looking to cash in on that equity to either downsize or to buy that dream home you've always been thinking about. And you're seeing that the market is hot and on fire and things are flying off the shelves for over asking and you want to take advantage of it, give me a call right now. Stephen Thayard, your radio realtor, at 408-472-0817. Again, 408-472-0817. So let's continue down the road of flood insurance. So if you purchase a flood insurance policy, make sure you look closely at the individual categories for the contents in your home. It's crucial to be aware of the value of items for each category and what your coverage limits are for each one. The reason I say that is you may have items in your home where the coverage limit is not large enough to cover other items that are of value inside your property. Certain categories might have limits well below the total value of the possessions you own that qualify. For example, artwork and furs generally have a total limit of only about $2,500. So if you've saved up for a very long time and you've purchased a piece of art from one of your favorite local artists and it's valued upwards of $3,000 to $5,000 and you happen to be sitting in an area where it floods and you have flood insurance, make sure to look at your policy carefully to make sure that these types of items are covered and the policy limits are where there should be, just in case you have to file a claim. The last thing you want to run into is a surprise if you need to use your flood insurance and you find out that what you've lost cannot be recovered because the limits have been reached and you did not do anything about it in advance. It's always better to be prepared well in advance than to find out at the last minute and have it be a surprise. All right, again, with that being said, if you are looking to work with someone of knowledge like your radio realtor, Stephen Thayard, and you're looking to buy or sell in the near future, give me a phone call right now at 408-472-0817. Again, 408-472-0817. And with that, we're going to go to a hard radio break commercial, and we'll see you on the other side. See you in a minute.
Looking to buy, sell, or refinance a home? Maybe you just need to spruce up the one you've got. This is the show that shows you how. It's The Real Estate Connection. Once again, your host, Stephen Thayard.
Welcome back to The Real Estate Connection with your radio realtor, Stephen Thayard. Hey, thank you for joining me today as we've been discussing flood insurance. And so here's a great big round of applause for you making it all the way through. I know the information can be dry, but it's better to be prepared. There's nothing worse than having the surprise of a flood disaster fall upon you and you not having all the knowledge and the information you can to set yourself up for success should an emergency strike. And flooding is one of those things that happens where it's completely unexpected and you may have to run very quickly. So if you at all think you may be in a flood area or you do live in a flood area and you have flood insurance, this is a good review for you to review your policy and to check because things always change. Last year, you may not have had that $3,000 piece of fine art sitting in your house, and this year you do. So you want to make sure that your coverages are where they should be should you have to get out in a hurry and you can't take that valuable item with you. Now, because of the priceless nature or high value of belongings such as art and fur coats, it wouldn't take many items and maybe even just one to go over the limit in this category of fine art. If that's the case, you'll want to see if there is additional protection you can buy for those specific categories and exclusions from coverage, okay? So we're talking about the fact that limits apply to both the structure of your home and there are deductibles, and limits apply to the contents of your home and there are deductibles. So where there are areas where you have gaps in your your coverage because the contents of your home, value of the contents of your home are higher than what your coverage currently is, you need to review your flood insurance policy to make sure that you are completely covered in that regard. In general, the policy excludes losses caused by earth movement, okay? Even if the earth movement is caused by flooding. So examples of excluded earth movement include earthquake, landslide, land subsidence, sinkholes, destabilization or movement of land resulting from accumulation of water, and gradual erosions. Other exclusions include currency, precious metals, valuable paper such as stock certificates, self-propelled vehicles such as cars, and there is limited coverage for damage below the first floor, such as crawl spaces and basements for structural and personal property. And this includes foundation, drywall, insulation, staircases, electrical outlets and switches, washers and dryers, food freezers, and portable ACs. So just remember, there is limited coverage for damage below the first floor, such as crawl spaces and basements for structural and personal property. Okay, so who is required to have flood insurance? Homes and businesses in high-risk flood areas with mortgages from federally regulated or insured lenders are required to have flood insurance. While flood insurance is not federally required if you live in a moderate to low-risk flood area, your lenders may still require you to have insurance. So this covers from 30,000 feet flood insurance and what it is, what it covers, generally speaking, and what it doesn't cover. So it's important that you look at your specific situation and look into whether or not this your flood insurance is covered, or whether or not you're going to be buying a home in a flood area, or maybe your house may have moved into a flood area because the flood maps tend to change. So I want to thank you for joining me on today's show. Build your house on the rock so that when the flood comes, it's not washed away. And with that being said, God bless you. God bless the United States of America. The market is still hot. Thank you for joining me on today's show, and we'll see you next week on another episode of The Real Estate Connection with your radio realtor, Stephen Thayard. Take care and goodbye.
This has been The Real Estate Connection with Realtor and Certified Probate and Real Estate Specialist, Stephen Thayard. Licensed Cal BRE number 0170019. For more information on this program, visit realestateconnectionradio.com. To contact Stephen directly, call 408-472-0817 or email info@realestateconnectionradio.com. And be sure to tune in next week at this time for The Real Estate Connection.